Welcome back, everyone, to Catapult Your Business, where we help take businesses to the next level, one question at a time. My name is Casey Clark. I am the CEO and co-founder of Cultivate Advisors, and I am so thrilled to be with you here today. I've got a great guest. I'm going to introduce him just in a moment, but we're actually here to talk about a very important question. What are the most important factors when it comes to recruiting an executive into your organization? Business owners, we go into this often for autonomy. We come at this as an entrepreneur to ultimately get freedom, put impact into the world, take our product, service, widget, whatever it might be, and hopefully find ways to scale. And often that means we've got to bring in leaders. We've got to bring in leadership teams. We've got to eventually even replace ourselves in the roles we serve so we can move to the next type of role as we learn to grow and scale the company. And all entrepreneurs go through this at some point when they're trying to scale their organization. This is a really important question. And as always, we're going to go deep and we're going to get into the thick of it. But before we do that, let me bring you the owner who brought me this question. First, I want to introduce you to David. David is the founder and partner, president and co-founder of Land Stewards Design Group out of Indianapolis. David's been a client of Cultivate for a long time, working with our advisor, Andrea. So glad to see that. But David, welcome to the call. We're so glad you're here.
Thanks, Casey. Great to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun today. David and I were checking up just a little bit before we got on, and I was learning about his company. It is freaking awesome. The fact that you are not only the land planning, the civil engineering side, but then also the landscape design. And what most people maybe don't know when they hear those things is like, what exactly does that mean? So I just thought I'd throw it out first before I talk about some cool things that I've learned about from our team that you're doing. But could you just define everybody listening in, like, what is the land planning and civil engineering side of what you do every day?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks. So with planning, we're taking a lot of times private developers' land, and we're finding the highest and best use for that land. We're working within all the constraints of zoning and the budget and whatnot to try to create something beautiful, create a vision, and then eventually that comes into a concept, and they can further their pro forma on that concept, get it all through the construction documents process, which we kind of also help them with. So everything from the beginning planning, visioning stage, all the way through construction documents that they can go hand off to a GC to get their project done for them. We're there with the whole process.
I love it. Well, and you've got kind of a niche here, right? A bit. I mean, I know you do a lot of different types of projects, but you've got some pretty cool. I just learned this from Andrea. The community spaces that you've kind of taken on. Do you mind just taking a minute just to talk about if there's like a favorite one or, something that you've experienced or built that you've seen come to life?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can't talk to me for too long without hearing my heart about our vision and our business and our ethos. So our business is really centered around creating human spaces and bolstering quality of life for anybody who's either in the outdoor space or connecting with a building or even using metro space, buses, bikes, things like that, trails, getting from place to place. There's a lot of hidden power in the design industry where we can, in a sense, tell people where to go, what to do, how to congregate, where to congregate. And all of those things we can use to better our city for the flourishing of people. So that's just a huge part of our vision.
I love it. Well, I know I was on a podcast a few weeks back and I was talking to Andrea, your advisor, and we were talking about, how do you have this other social aspect or this, what you give back or the impact you make back into, either the local environment where you live or, some type of industry or some type of group of individuals who gain. And your example came up and it's pretty cool. So if you want to hear a little bit more about it, go check out my other episode here with Andrea, one of our talented business advisors. And look, I know, David, I speak on behalf of Andrea. Cultivate, we're super happy to, be able to partner with you. Thank you for letting us work with you. And I know Andrea is really excited about what you're building and you're off to such a fast start. I think you got big things ahead of you. So kudos to you for the entrepreneurial journey this far. And thanks again for letting us partner alongside you.
Thank you as well. It's been great.
Awesome. Well, absolutely. Let's get in this question though, right? All these entrepreneurs are listening in. And again, we have this desire to replace ourselves and to build a leadership team. Tell me a little bit about this role you're going to be hiring for. Like, give me just the high level overview. What type of role is this for?
Yeah, so we're at a point now where I've got my business partner who kind of heads up the landscape architecture side of things, and I head up the civil engineering. I'm the licensed professional who stamps all the plans.
Yep.
Functioning as the president as well as kind of managing the business very much is a huge demand. Yeah, of my time. And in the last 2 years, we've had kind of in and out other civil engineers working under me and with me, but not really anybody in a even nearly comparable position taking on civil engineering in a project management role, in a technical reviewer role. And so it's always just been very dependent on me. So this is a very intentional step for me to not only be able to free myself up to do what I do best, what I believe I do best, which is largely working with large clients at the very beginning of the project, visioning, conceptual programming and planning for the project, doing some business development, and then helping the business just flourish in all of its aspects, and taking it away from being a part of the production process itself. So this is somebody who would come in, who would be able to more or less run the production elements that I'm currently working in. As a project manager, a technical expert in the team. And so it's a high level of trust. It's a high level of delegation. And, for me, being a young business owner, this is definitely a first for me. So definitely a huge question, something that I need to learn as much as I can, as quickly as I can, so that I have the best experience I can with the new hire.
Well, just the emotional output too of like getting away from production it's a hard thing for most business owners, but you've started to scale pretty quickly. You've had a lot of success here. And I think as that continues, you're going to find that you're going to need even more than just one leader, right? It's going to keep evolving. So it's not only just getting good for this one time, it's also, if I can get through this learning curve faster, it allows me to move a little quicker on each additional executive hire I'm going to bring in, because it's probably one of many for you. Yeah. And I think, for all the entrepreneurs and business owners listening in, if you haven't done this yet and you're in the exact same, boat here as David, just know hiring an executive is different than hiring a team member. It is different. and I'll go one step further. Hiring the first executive or two that's not an equity owner in the business is extremely important that you get it right, because it sets the tone and culture of how the leadership team is going to get built. And so kudos for you, David, to just realize there's a little bit of a, hey, take a step, like make sure I got this right and orchestrated, and we should be able to move forward. So let's just get into some of the depth here. I think, let's just talk about what is different, right? What is different about hiring the executive over hiring, maybe just a team member of a role that you've already got several people in that role. You've already got a way of doing things. You've already got metrics you're looking at. Have you thought about what's going to feel a little different for you? Like, what comes to mind when I ask that in terms of it now being an executive?
Yeah, absolutely. So this would be a role of somebody I'm going to be interacting with regularly. Not only do I need to feel comfortable with their skill, but I also need to appreciate who they are as a person. And there has to be some kind of alignment with morals and vision for life. They have to be very much on the vision that we've already cast for the company. Okay. If they, like you said, it's a higher risk. There's a little bit more at stake here. You are bringing on and bringing off leadership that it can be very destabilizing. I've seen it happen at other companies.
I mean, you're dead on. You're dead on to the facts. I think there are 3 or 4 components that you have to look through the lens. And I know you're aware of a few of them because our prior conversation before we jumped on today. But, the first one is, what's the financial implication, right? As we all know, the financials are the engine of the business. We've got to tie this all the way back. I know you're a data fan. I know you buy into decision-making, via data, but you've got to run some stress tests. You have to be able to understand what's the runway look like and how do you extend that runway for the person. So I want to dive into that for a moment. The second factor that I see a lot of times is like, how will you go about recruiting this person? Normally it's recruited a little differently when you think through all the different lenses of who you want to get, because it's just a bigger hire. It usually involves more money of some kind, usually involves a lot more responsibility out of the gates. So you have to think through that and like, who are you really looking for and why? There's just a little bit more of intentionality that kicks. The third one that I see a lot of times is expectation setting is way more important. Talk a little bit about some of those best practices and what we've seen is some of the most crucial expectations that need to be set when bringing in that first leader, to be more specific. And then the fourth one really ties back to just success metrics in general, right? What are going to be the KPIs? How are you going to define success? How are you going to communicate that success requirement through the recruitment process to either identify or weed out the perfect candidate that you're going to bring on, for this leadership team. So those are kind of the four components that I'd say we can dig into today that should help navigate and get us over the line, or at least get us moving in the right direction. Does that sound good to start with those four?
Yeah, fantastic.
Perfect. It can be endless. We could talk endlessly about
I know. Yeah. It's like after you listed all that off, it's like, oh yeah, no worries, right? It's like only
no worries.
Things.
That in the next 18 minutes. Right, exactly. We could do a 2 or 3 day masterclass on this, I'm sure. And we will, right? We'll follow up. You and Andrea will get in the weeds and start to go take this even further on your one-on-ones. But for today, let's at least start to break down some of these components so everybody listening can also just hear and go, okay, this is the framework I have to work through if I'm really serious about bringing this type of hire in. So let's talk about the financials. I'm assuming this role is going to be a little bit higher of a paid role. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Probably a low 6-figure role.
Okay. So when you start to get to those ranges and you start to look at, I'm going to call more of like a senior person. This is probably not a junior person that you're hiring right out of the gates. And the reason for that is we've got to be realistic of that. You are replacing yourself. I often see business owners make this mistake early on when they go to recruit talent, and especially leadership talent, or executive talent that's going to have more oversight. They stick to a little bit more of like out of cost fear. I'm going to hire more junior, somebody that doesn't have as much experience.
Mm-hmm.
What they don't think through is that actually makes more sense to do when you're more established, because you can actually have more staff to help cross-train, help have oversight, right? You have the ability to actually create the environment for juniors and middle tier success level folks to come in and move up and train within your organization. But when you're trying to replace yourself, you actually will have a harder time giving the amount of resource and dedication needed to get them over the line. Also, your customers are used to a certain level of output from you. I've always said, like, business owners who are strong producers who start to grow a business have the hardest time replacing themselves, right? Versus a business owner who starts as they're just really good at sales, but they've always just hired the producers from day one. Two very different types of businesses at scale.
Yeah, that's my story, man. You nailed it. I'm a half 50% utilization. So
yeah, exactly.
Are you getting the advice you need for your business from this episode? Do you want to get more than just one question answered and have it customized to you and your business? Well, Cultivate Advisors works one-on-one with thousands of business owners every day. Let them help you scale your business today. Don't just listen to this episode. Take action and go to cultivateadvisors.com to see which advisor you get matched with and receive a free 2-hour business assessment on how you could scale your business to the next level. Act now at cultivateadvisors.com.
There's so many businesses that start this way, and I love it because it just means you actually got in the industry out of pure passion and joy of what you do, and you thought you could do it at a different level or with a different type of approach. And so I think that speaks volume to the quality of your business and why you've been so successful. But gosh, your customers are now used to a certain level, right? Your team members that are collaborating and working, from what's going to be done by this individual, they're used to a certain level. You can create some shock to the system if you don't get this right. And that's probably that fear, that thought process that you're, maybe you can't tangibilize it like I just said it, but you're feeling it most likely. Because it's real. It's going to happen, right? So I think a lot of times people look at financial implication. They're just like, well, how much do you have to pay them? Okay, do I have that much cash in the bank? I'm like, okay, yeah, that's like 101 with any hire.
Right.
It's the 102, the 103, and the 104s where I find people don't always process through this to go,
Yeah.
Should I go up market actually? And should I be at the top paywall? And should I actually go get pretty high experience? But I also have to think about how many more years in the career do I want them to have? Because I also don't want to have to replace this person really quickly. And that might change a different financial component to where sometimes you have to get creative of how you pay if you don't have enough cash to burn on the higher tier. And so that's where, what I like to call is, really getting more in flexible compensation sometimes matters. So you can move up market. And I always tell
We've talked about this position offering a pathway towards ownership. And I think that if we have time to roll that into this is,
phantom equity.
How does that play a role? And is that something, you can't really take it back once you say it,
You can. You can.
Okay, so talk me through that.
Yeah, so this is exactly what I mean. So I wouldn't go after equity right away. I would definitely lead with the idea of that, hey, upon success, 2 years of service, really full blast, we would plan to bring you some type of equity program. It will most likely be a phantom equity model. To define phantom equity for those that haven't heard about it, it's essentially you just make an internal equity inside. So they don't actually have to sign their dotted line. So if you have a cash call or there's a cash burn, that way you remove the risk. And it also doesn't require a buy-in. There's a lot of reasons to do this for taxation savings for both parties. But it's true phantom equity. It's essentially just before you look at your real equity, let's say you've given up 10% of phantom equity, you only get to play with 90% that falls down to the true shareholders that take on the financial and tax burden. That's essentially how it works in the simplest form. What I'm talking about actually more is more of an intrinsic compensation program where we go, what are some of the success metrics that we'll talk about in a moment that we can tie back and let them gain? So if the company does well because of the work they're doing, they have a small revenue share, or they, instead of setting just like a traditional $10,000 bonus or $20,000 bonus at the end of the year, it's, hey, we're actually going to say it's $10,000 if this metric's hit. But for everything that's better than that, somehow, however you measure it, we're going to let you have a driver that's unlimited, right? Depending on how you perform. So if our revenue really skyrockets and you figure out how to be super productive and you solve that for us, well, let's say we measure your labor rate based on revenue produced versus how much we pay you. For every percentage we save, we're going to split it 50-50 with you. So if you save labor percentage by 8%, you're going to make 4% more of the revenue we generated. Just getting really creative and thinking through those different volumes to where if they are a really strong performer, they make a ton more money. You won't do this, by the way, with future hires.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you know, in this same role, this is really something you look to implement in the first one or two if you want to level up on the cash. And again, that's only, David, if there's an issue on the payout of trying to get top talent.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, you want to get your mentor for future talent in the door right now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't play at this size of business. Don't play the junior and I'm going to build them. So what that also now means, right, on the financial implication side, is you've got to connect the dots to go, are we going to be sustainable in the amount of revenue we need to pay at that higher volume?
Yeah.
So my biggest advice is stay down on the salary and put more time into the recruiting process and know you're going to have a few more candidates turn you down because of the financial aspects of it. Mm-hmm. The right one, the right person is going to love that they can get all that upside because they're that confident in their abilities.
That's great. I love that. And Andrea and I have talked a little bit about that with a little bit of a twist.
Okay.
I think because we're such a strong missionally focused company, we also, finding the right person could mean that they're willing to take a smaller salary potentially for work-life balance and working with a company that they really enjoy.
Money is only one factor of somebody who picks a career, right? We can't ever forget it. It's who, the vision, right? The team, the location. I mean, now it's like, do I get to be a little remote from time to time? Do I have flexibility?
Yeah, benefits are huge. Yeah.
Right. These are just all the things that people take into account now. It's not only the money, but what I found, it lets you compete to get top talent. is when you're just so clear on why you're doing what you're doing, and you can clearly communicate that and go, look, I value these things more than the cash. If you're looking for top dollar and not guaranteed performance for that top dollar, we're not the right shop for you. However, if you are looking for a place where you can probably make the same amount of money as the top producers, as long as you truly are top producing, because of how I've gotten creative with our compensation, this is a great home for you. And we know that. So let's just cut through it right now and identify that today. Is that who you are? Or do you need a higher base? Because if so, we can stop the process right now.
Yeah, if they hesitate, you kind of know already.
Yeah, exactly. And as owners, we take it personally, right? We're like, you can't take it personally. You're creating no different than your ideal client persona. You are creating the ideal candidate persona, and you need to communicate that effortlessly out of the gates of why that's who you're looking for. And I think people are just a little scared to talk about the money or talk about those different aspects out of the gates. Mm-hmm. With this type of role, I actually find you talk right like in the first 15 to 20 minutes of the candidate's conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, just make that not a taboo topic. I love it because at my previous work, one of the reasons why I even had kind of the idea to start my own thing and to feel confident about moving forward was I was killing it as a project manager and, very much stuck at a salary that was, fit that role, but had nothing to do with my performance. And I knew that if I, once I sold X number of projects, I could actually get a huge pay jump by leaving. This was a great company that I worked for previously. I would say nothing bad about them, but it was just a truth that I, being an engineer, I'm a pretty analytical guy. I can figure out, I see everybody's pay rates or, bill rates. I see money's coming in, as project managers, you get to see all that stuff. So it was pretty clear. And I think the right person will also see that. So I think that's great advice.
Totally. And I think the two last pieces on financials, and then we'll move, is just to dig this further, is make sure also that you are really clear in the expectations of what the success metrics are, and make sure your success metrics tie back to your runway on cash.
Okay. Right? Yeah.
So what you want to do is, coming into this, you probably want to introduce some type of probationary period. Like, we're going to bring you on for 90 days. And these are the 2 or 3 things we have to see. And as long as we see those things, this is going to be a good fit. Yeah. But what I don't like is when people take on this kind of role and they're like, let's see how it goes. Don't have that perspective. Be black and white and go, this is what we're going to measure success on in the first 90 days. This is how we're going to know if we're in pursuit of the right fit. And if not, we may have to make a move, and tell people that up front, because that'll also shy people away. Because we have to understand, when we go out to candidates, some people are meant to come into a team already built, systems built, programs built.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You can't have that. You need the generalist. You need the person excited to help you build, excited to take things out of your head and put it into consistent systems that all the rest of roles like this you hire will follow. Right. And so you have to talk openly about that if you want to attract that type of person. And it's probably gonna be somebody who's like always thought of like, gosh, I'd love to be the number 2, like the person who's like really high up, has a big say in a lot of conversations, and I don't want all the stress and pressure on myself. That's your candidate. That's who you're looking for. Not just, I've been a career civil engineer. I've got, all this experience. You're lucky to have me. That's actually not who you're looking for.
Yeah, no, I think you guys are big on the Acumax, right? So
we love the Acumax. That's everybody listening in. That's an assessment. It helps identify a lot of different traits of folks.
Yeah, we've integrated that into our recruiting process. Andrea has been a big advocate of that, and I think that will also speak to the type of personality in who we're hiring. Really needs to be, like you said, somebody who's a little bit more of personally invested in the process, and be able to be a creative process developer and not just an executor. Absolutely.
You're the last one here that I want to just bolt on this financials, and then we'll move. A lot of people, when we, as owners, and this is really more specifically for you, David, because this is the first time it's happening and you truly are replacing yourself in a role. as owners, for whatever reason, we just get so excited about the freedom and release of getting that off our plate. Two things to be mindful of financially. One, it'll probably take you 2 or 3 months until you actually feel that release after the hire.
Right.
Really important to know that on how to incorporate that towards financials. And then number two, another factor on top of that, make sure you also go run what are the metrics you need to go achieve in the next 12 months with the new types of things, like you're going to want to get on more business development probably because you're going to need to generate more revenue to continue to cover that additional cost and burden, right, to the bottom line. So when you're going at that, I just strongly encourage you to not just run the candidate's success metrics. You also need to now run what are your new CEO, president metrics that you have to go follow through and you have to go manage to show that that was the right time and it was the right win of why you replaced yourself at this moment.
That's great. Yeah.
Because it's easy, right? It's easy to compare and just go, oh, I would have done this better. Yeah, of course you would. You're the founder. Like,
well, you see all those entrepreneurs out there. It's like, you want to go, hang out on a beach while everybody else makes money for you. And that, I don't know, that might be attractive to some other people, but that's not really a reality for most. And it's certainly not really a vision I have for myself. So.
Well, I've always just said when somebody can do something 80% as good as me, it doesn't make sense for me to do it anymore in the company, right? And that's just a scalar's mindset. And so it's not about the freedom of the beach. It's truly more about your ability to go, okay, I'm paying this dollar amount per month or per quarter out to have this person's doing all this work. This is fantastic. Well, if you don't get any additional gains on more revenue or more business development or other areas in the business that you can attribute your development to, argumentatively, you're just both coexisting. And you've actually just created more overhead, more risk to the business. So just if you don't define that clearly, it also doesn't allow you to actually force yourself to step away, is what I found. And owners get stuck and then they enable their leader and then they wonder why it didn't work out. It's not the person, it's actually the owner.
Yeah, because if you don't have that, I can see it now. If you don't have that process in place, you're going to start blaming people for why certain things are happening. Because it's like, oh, I planned this new person. I've got their whole onboarding. I've got, all the finances figured out. Everything's, working except for we're losing money or something like that. And you have to be able to own that.
I can't stress it enough. Let me give you one or two things to think about on the tactics. I don't know that I would recruit this role without a recruiter.
Okay.
And here's why. Really good talent is already employed and not on job boards.
Yeah.
That's why. I think you need to go poach it. So if we're not going to have a recruiting company do it, I would definitely go, find a contractor off Upwork to play the LinkedIn game. To send out some emails to maybe some really reputable companies. I've always said poaching talent on the leadership side for your first hire. There are so many people that are sitting inside of these, not your first hire, sorry, your first executive hire.
Right.
Don't want to give any bad, if any of your team members watch this, right, I don't want to think that we don't know they exist. We know they do, and they're doing a great job. But the senior leaders, think about the people that are probably in a company where it's like, oh, I just wish I had more of a say in something. I wish I had a little more autonomy. I wish I had a little bit more, responsibility. That's who you want to play off of. Like, hey, are you happy? If you are, great. Poaching doesn't have to be this like dog eat dog world. It can just be like, how's it going for you there? Have you ever thought about what it would look like to join a firm who's kind of up and coming? We're looking for the first civil engineer to actually replace the founder. You'll have a lot of autonomy. That will be very attractive. My gut says setting that out, you will get a ton of hits of people who want to have a conversation with you, and you poaching someone out of the employment circle versus someone who's just looking, that's frustrated or, they're jobless right now. You're probably at a higher risk. I know that's not fair because not everybody's in that situation, but boy, is it a pretty consistent pattern when you bring on an executive level individual.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
So just be mindful of that. I want to talk more about the tactics. This is kind of the second piece of like, what are the best practices to recruit this person? I can't stress this enough. And everybody works locally for you. Is that right?
Yes.
So this will be a local hire. Okay. They have to be, right? I mean, of course, right? Because
50% or more in the office is required.
Yeah, exactly. So these folks, I strongly encourage you to set up your interview process with a day in the life step. of the role. It is worth the commitment. Now, respectfully, I always encourage you to pay for that day. So this is more towards the end of the recruiting process. So think of it as like a 2 interview process is what I would do to like identify traits. Do I have the right person? Do I enjoy like looking at the skill set? But then I would do a day in the life shadow where you can actually ask questions when you go to look at projects or go to look at stuff, or even just go to other projects you've worked on. Like, what's your perspective of this? What do you like? What do you not like? What would you have done differently? Right? Mm-hmm. Really slowing, or how would you thought through this? Use that really tangible example. So there's no way you get tricked by what I call a faker. Right? Like, I just don't want you to have any trickery that happens since it's your first time finding this person in this type of role. But I also want to make sure there's this unbelievable cultural fit. Buy lunch for the whole team that day. Let everybody get to know them. See how they engage. See the level of collaboration that already kicks off. And is this cultural fit? Don't hire the person to wait to find that out. You can do that with a team member. You can't do that with a first-time executive. That's different.
That's new information for me. So that's great.
Cool. And again, usually you just pay like a stipend, like I'm going to pay a couple $100 for your time. Again, usually you're kind of being upfront, like, I feel pretty good about this. I think there could be a fit here. Would you be open to giving a day so we can really just get to experience it and we both have all the confidence we need? Happy to pay you for your time.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it from their shoes, I would think that would be a very attractive offer to try something out, because it's a big risk for them as much as it is you. Absolutely.
So the last thing is you're going to want to find somebody who is excited to lead a team. So the recruiting process, in my opinion, should not just be the skills that they have, the functional skills that they're going to need, but it's also about the skills they're going to need in the future. So I want you to be thinking 2, 3, 4 years down about your firm and thinking through that in your line of questioning. Dig into leadership skills, dig into their abilities, take on more responsibility in the future. Do they have a desire? And what's their background with that? What's their confidence level of that? Where's their superpowers? Where's some of their weaknesses at? But don't just interview for today. I always say interview for today is with a leader or just an executive role coming in the organization. And then also interview for 3 or 4 years from now where you think this firm will be. You might pick a different candidate because of that when you get down to your final 2 or 3.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So just be very mindful of that.
Thanks for tuning in to Catapult Your Business, where Cultivate Advisors is helping you catapult your business one question at a time. Are you running your business, or is your business running you? At Cultivate Advisors, they'll match you with an expert advisor and do a free 2-hour deep dive for your business. This will give you the clarity you need on how to get your business to the next level. Cultivate has worked with thousands of businesses. What do you have to lose? So head over to cultivateadvisors.com and sign up for your free 2-hour session.
So we've talked financials. You feel like you got your head wrapped around some of those elements and some things to think about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We've talked about the tactics and best practices. Was there anything else specific you were thinking about on the recruiting process itself that you're curious about?
No, I think in terms of who to involve, that's all pretty straightforward. We have a smaller firm. And we typically go a process of, very informal lunch or coffee meetup to an in-depth, more multi-hour thing in the office. Awesome. With real practice on real work. I think a whole day makes a ton of sense. So yeah, I think that's great. I think that'll be very attractive also for the right person because especially if you're going to get into it for the mission and for the long-term value, things like what kind of chair am I sitting in matters, right?
Yeah.
All those little intangible or tangible and intangible things, might really matter. So.
Well, then let's move this third and fourth one here. These are going to be a little quicker, but the third one is expectation setting. So just what are the expectations you need to set, right? What do those look like in the interview process? There's probably 3 or 4 additional expectations around cultural requirements, levels of introspection like that you need them to have, right? Their ability to look internally. Also just being aware that they're replacing you and that they're going to hear for a little while, like, oh, well, David did it this way, right? And it's like having enough confidence to work through that imposter syndrome and push through those elements, right? To where they get on the other side and they have the ability to go like, well, this is the way I'd like to do it. Can we try to find a way to make that happen? Very important conversations when you're replacing yourself that too many people have after people start versus, gosh, it really sets the tone if you have it in the interview process.
Mm-hmm.
Goes way better just from personal experience of doing that wrong and doing that right. So it makes a difference. Yeah, absolutely. And then the fourth one is just like, how are you going to define success for this person, right? I mean, this is a pretty labor intensive world. I gave you one metrics I threw out, was just like, I love tracking labor rate on roles like this. I love like literally going revenue attribution back to how much we pay them, and then let them actually just be aware of what percentage they're making of the revenue that they're generating, and how they can actually start to control that to an extent of their ability. But also, you don't want to lose sight of the quality standard, right? Like it's a hard balance because you've got to
definitely.
So I've always said have a success metric on both. Have a success on like what I call the capacity output. Labor rates are really consistent way to track that, essentially. That way, if you pay somebody more, you pay somebody less. You can always compare and contrast much easier. And then on the second side, you need some type of quality metric, which sometimes can be subjective. And it's just, you're going to submit this quarterly analysis of all your work. We're going to review it. And we're going to give you a score. And here's a tier system. And this is what that's worth.
Yeah. It's actually something that Andrea and I are trying to implement right now is instead of doing a survey to each of our clients that have completed projects each year, doing one at the end of each project. And if we have that system in place before this person comes, then we can say, hey, this is just how we do it. And then we can get whatever questions do we want and say, how did this, follow up with you? How did this project manager do for you guys throughout the process? Because that's a huge word of mouth marketing, and it's how we get our new projects. So that's going to be a very important follow-up for me to do and make sure that this new person is executing on.
I mean, if you have the quantitative measurement from the customer and the qualitative kind of overview from the team, and then you've also tied in the analytical metric, right, of the financial implication to their labor cost, you've kind of got the perfect trifecta. And they have to learn how to balance that. And again, the key though is just tie that back to the run rate on the financial side and tie that back to the success metrics needed on the onboarding. So it's all connected in a very simple puzzle. And so that way it all connects when you set your expectations to then what you deliver. As long as you do that and you hire the generalist, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape here. Just remember, you need 3 months of onboarding probably. People think like I hire the person, I'm gone. No. That's not good. Good luck.
Yeah, that's been kind of our mindset too.
Okay, good.
3 months of the process to make sure, and then really ROI doesn't come until more like 8 or 9 months.
I love it. Well, David, I know we're out of time here. Essentially, you've got a really important task in front of you, and it's going to make a big difference in your company. And I know you're going to be slowing down and spending more time with Andrea. What was the 1 or 2 big thing you grabbed today? You're like, okay, this is what I've circled. This is what I've got on the paper that I'm going to be able to implement based on this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, really the day in the life experience, as you mentioned, for that very end of the onboarding or the end of the interview process to make sure it's a good fit. I have not even thought about what that could look like, but it very much makes sense, and it would be honestly easy for us to integrate the way that we already do things. So that's a big takeaway. That's a big takeaway for me, as well as if I can say too, having a direct, having some of those creative, what's the word that I'm trying to say? Having a creative reimbursement system or a creative pay system for that hire allows you to leverage more money than you can actually just front them in cash. So.
To go up market. Yep. So you're not stuck in the junior environment on this first one, because that'll be painful.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, approve them. It's like, you don't understand the time resource. That's not actually set for it yet. Give yourself 2 more years, you'll probably be set for it. Right now, it's a lot tougher. So that's awesome. That's a great grab. For everybody
enough
listening,
of us. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
I was gonna say, we're enough of a startup too that I really need this person to be a little bit flexible and a little bit of that mindset. That I'm not here to get, but I'm here to invest myself.
Yes.
And help create something here.
I mean, well said. Well said. And I was just going to kind of document the same thing or validate the same thing for everyone else here. Everybody listening in, the reality is you want to replace yourself. You want to bring on executive leaders. You want to create scale. It's just about what I'm really talking about. A lot of this conversation with you, David, is intentionality. It's just trying to predict the future and pull it forward, slowing it down, doing things a little bit slower out of the gates to open yourself up as you walk into this, to hit this right, because it is a bigger risk. It will cause a bigger plug. If you go on and start doing more things on the business development side or some of the other tasks you shared, and this person falls out and you are sucked back into the role, it will hurt you and the business way more than bringing on an additional team member.
Yeah.
And we just can't forget that as owners. So do it right, do your prep, slow it down. And if you're not 100% positive on the candidate, it's a no. I'd rather you wait 3 months to make the shift to find the right person than have to get it in a month time. Don't put a deadline on this.
Yeah.
Not this one. It's not the one I'd play with. All right.
Well said.
All right. Perfect. For everybody listening in, keep driving the entrepreneurial journey forward. If you were curious though, and you're like, hey, I could really use either land planning, or maybe I need, some type of landscape design or civil engineering services, and you want to reach out to David because maybe you're sitting in the Indianapolis area or, nearby areas. How far do you travel, David, for your clients?
We do projects all over Indiana. So,
all right. So if you've got something in Indiana or you're connected to somebody looking for something, I will absolutely put my stamp of approval, behind David's firm here, Land Stewards Design Group. Where's the best way, David, for them to meet you? Is it website or email? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Great question. We just revamped our website, landstewardsdg.com.
Perfect.
That's the best place to go.
All right. We'll throw that in the chat or in the comments, depending on if you're on a podcast or you listen to our YouTube video channel. But thank you all for joining us to another jam-packed episode of Catapult Your Business, where we help catapult businesses one question at a time. We'll see you for another question next week. Bye, all.